So this video is 90% some guy just saying his subjective opinion on a recent AVGN episode, and although I disagree, I don't really have a problem with those parts. However, he also makes some utterly baffling claims about the series in general, which I would like to respond to.
What's that he's holding? Is that a phone? Is this a mobile game? Are we seriously at the point where mobile games are retro now? Even ones from 2016? Whatever.
I mean, it's roughly as old as Superman 64 was when he covered it, that game being 9 years old and this game being 8 years old. Something the nerd even mentioned when he reviewed said game.
And you know what the most pathetic thing about it is? This game isn't even 10 years old. Just barely. You'd think by 1999 there'd be some kind of quality standard.
Even though I hoped I'd never see the day where the nerd discovers smartphones.
Why? If anything, I'd view it as inevitable if the series was going to continue, and given mobile games can be a very good source of comedy, especially when reviewed in the nerd style, it's not as if this is inherently not something he can work with. Even if you don't think this episode was all that good, it wasn't as if the mere concept of him playing a mobile game is what killed it. I also want to go on a small unrelated tangent and just say that anytime the nerd gets a newest game that he's reviewed, a lot of people get really surprised, but the goal of the show is to take you back to the past. Not take you back to some year before this specific arbitrary stopping point. What is the past right now is different from what the past was when his series started. And the motto has always been vague enough to where James could realistically throw in any game that wasn't a new release if he so chose.
The nerd does touch upon some of the flaws that plague mobile gaming, like ads and wait timers and microtransactions kinda, but it's all very surface level and never goes deeper than a few sentences of mild annoyance. In fact, it takes the nerd no time at all to give into the microtransactions. Like, bruh, you were the chosen one. I was hoping the nerd would at least try to dig his heels in a little bit, actually try to focus on how these games purposely grind to a halt to manipulate you into spending money. But no, he wastes no time in buying golden carrots so he could rush through the game, because having actual things for the angry video game nerd to get angry about is far less important than having the nerd pause the review to text Bugs Bunny.
What exactly would be the point of waiting until later in the episode to make use of the microtransactions? Furthermore, what about the nerd's character makes you think he wouldn't use microtransactions? This is the guy who's used Game Genie several times. And by the way, he did discuss exactly what you wanted him to talk about just before he brought up the microtransactions. Here's the clip from the episode.
No matter what you do, this meter is the slowest I've ever seen. And I mean that. Anytime you get one of the items, it hardly even moves a pixel. And the items don't come often enough. But you can spawn them faster if you buy gold carrots. And I mean with actual money.
What kind of idiot would spend real money on this game? All right, let's do it.
Like, no one uses emojis like that anymore outside of Twitter.
And people also don't tend to wear white button-up shirts with pocket protectors that frequently these days. What's your point?
I've been starting work on this massive AVGN retrospective with the goal of seeing if he's actually fallen off or not. Because I've stumbled upon several video essays that have relegated the series to the fate of The Simpsons, where, the first several seasons were regarded as the golden age until Screenwave Media scooped it up, and from there it stopped being as good. Most modern AVGN episodes are often seen as mediocre, if not disappointing. It seemed like the series started to focus more on quantity rather than quality, with very few golden age caliber episodes throughout.
The nerd uploaded far more frequently in his golden age than he does now, though. Here's an FAQ from back in the day where James says there was going to be a new nerd episode twice a month on average. Something he hasn't followed since the early 2010s or so.
If you were to check out the IMDb page for AVGN, yes, that exists and I have my issues with it, believe me, you'll see that this Horse Prince episode is by far the lowest rated episode in series history, even lower than episode 200. And this comes after a string of semi-well regarded ones.
That IMDb page has 5 reviews, not saying their opinions are the minority inherently or that they aren't reflective of the general consensus. However, I'm going to need a wider sample size in order to believe it represents the entirety of the AVGN audience.
Not to mention the comment sections on YouTube. The Goonies episode has people showing nothing but respect for the man reaching his 20th anniversary, while everyone in the Horsepants episode is just confused if not concerned. And I don't blame them.
So your evidence is an IMDb page with 5 reviews and scrolling through the first couple dozen comments of 2 different AVGN episodes. Again, that's just not a very good sample size. Anyway, final thoughts. If you don't like this one episode of AVGN, that's fine, but don't make sweeping claims about things like the nerd as a series or the fanbase reaction when you cannot properly substantiate it. Good night, and good luck.